Which teams in the Pacific got better, worse, or stayed the same after this offseason?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. Want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to kind of peek around the Pacific Division to kind of see how the rest of the teams are looking. And while the Sharks are in the early stages of the rebuild, right, the foundation is poured, they're starting to kind of put up the framing. You know, it's good to see what the rest of the neighborhood is doing. That way you kind of know what to expect in future years and which teams right now I think are competing, which teams I think got worse or maybe got better. And of course, that 2025 unprotected first round pick from the Vegas Golden Knights. So we're going to kind of look around at all the different Pacific teams, and I just, which teams I think are going to be better, worse, or about the same this season. So before we get into all that, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So the Pacific Division, of course, plenty of teams in the division, and we're going to I'm going to start by looking at the three teams, which I think are going to be better this upcoming season, and whether that's through moves they made in free agency or just maybe some natural growth in the case of one team. But which teams I think are going to be kind of in a position to be a better team going forward. And I think you have to start at home with the San Jose Sharks, who I think will be a more competitive team. This, I think, is also going from being one of the worst teams we've seen in recent history to just being a normal bad team, and being just a more competitive team in and out. You go and look at what the Sharks did this offseason, right? Of course, drafting Macklin Celebrini. You also bring in Will Smith, who are both going to be having rookie seasons. They also added Carl Grundstrom, Barclay Goodrow, Tyler Toffoli, Jake Wallman, Alex Wenberg, and their key players lost: Kalen Addison, Alexander Barabanov, Devin Cooley, Mike Hoffman, and Kevin LeBanc. So I think this team is going to be a more competitive team night in, night out, and going from the absolute worst team, clear cut, like everybody knows that this is the worst team that in the NHL, to maybe like the third worst team, or just a more competitive night in, night out. This team, I think, is going to be better. Incremental baby step improvements. But I think this team's going to be better, and you have to start at home. And we of course, this is a Sharks podcast, so we talk about the Sharks every day. So again, I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of peek around. And so we'll spend some more time on some of the other teams here. But again, the Sharks should be a better team, and that doesn't even include if Logan Couture is able to play more than 6 games this season. William Eklund going into year 2, Henry Thrun in year 2, Ty Emerson in year 2. There's the makings for this team to be a much better team night in and night out. So a lot of hope, right? That's kind of been the theme of the summer. The future is teal. This team is going, it's kind of starts this season. So we hopefully should start to see some improvements in the win. Again, if you're going from 19 wins to like 25 wins, that's a massive improvement for a team that was one of the worst teams we have seen in recent memory. And I do not want to ever have to do that again. So let's talk about some other teams, and we'll kind of just go, I think, alphabetical, maybe. Sure. I don't want to but I think another team who will be better next season, who had honestly a bad offseason, but I think they're just going to be better, is the Anaheim Ducks. So, of course, the Ducks went into the offseason with a ton of cap space and kind of just sat on their hands, right? They didn't really lose too many players. They lost Max Jones and Jacob Silverberg. They added defenseman Brian Dumoulin, Robbie Fabry, and Jansen Harkins. But again, it's this team that's also kind of added Cutter Gauthier, who played, I think he played one game last year. Leo Carlson is going to be going into year 2. But of course, there is the Trevor Zegras situation of it all. But this team is that team, and I've talked about it with Seth on the Western Conference episodes before. But like, this team should start to enter the fun, frisky phase of their life cycle here really soon, because this rebuild has felt painfully slow, right? They've been drafting all these high picks. It just feels like this is you're almost starting to kind of cycle out of these high picks with guys like Trevor Zegras. And if this team should start to win more games, because they have a lot of top end talent on this roster. And like, I know the goaltending, there's the John Gibson question and what they do with him, but he still can be a really good goaltender. This team, for the sake of the team and for the sake of the franchise and for the sake of the fans, they need to start winning some games here and being a more competitive team. Because I don't know how much more patience, if I was a Ducks fan, how much more patience I could have with the way this rebuild has been going, and just not seeing a lot of progress from this team, right? Like, how many times has this team picked in the top 5 of the past couple of seasons? It feels like that's all they've done for basically since they got knocked out of the playoffs by Vegas. It feels like they've just been picking top 5 picks in, and when are you going to do something? So I think this is the year that the Ducks finally start to do something. And that's going from, maybe not picking top 3, top 5 to picking top, more like a 10, 11, 12 type of team, and just being more competitive and starting to see some growth out of these young players and a reason to kind of why this should be the next core, right? Nothing worse than drafting as our friends over at the Sabres, right? Drafting it and just, it's not the guys, right? And not being aggressive enough when they needed to be aggressive enough, and just taking it too slow. And I think there's a lot of reasons why the Ducks should be good. And I think it starts with kind of their forward group with Cutter Gauthier and Leo Carlson, and Mason McTavish, like that. That's a really, and if Trevor Zegras can kind of turn back the clock, which is a really weird thing, or take his next step in his development. And if they can just stay healthy, there's a lot of reason why the Ducks should be a more fun and competitive team. Plus, I like the New Jerseys. I think the New Jersey is going to add some juice to the team. So the next team, I think, that got better, even though I don't really agree with how they got there, but I think the Seattle Kraken. So they lost Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Chris Drager, Brian Dumoulin, and Justin Schultz in free agency, but they added Josh Mahura, Brandon Montour, and Chandler Stevenson. So I think natural upgrades in some of those spots. Do they way overpay for Chandler Stevenson? 1,000%, but that's a problem for future Kraken. And you're also getting Shane Wright, who's had a very odd and weird development path, right? Was supposed to be the first overall pick until literally the night before the draft. Falls to number 4. Of course, we all know the stare down as he's getting drafted. Goes back and his first right after his draft, right? Spends time with the Kraken. Goes down to Coachella. Gets traded in the OHL. Like, just a very weird season where he ends up playing for it felt like 50 different teams that year. Last year, is able to go play in the AHL because of a waiver. You got exemption for it. He had a really nice season with Coachella, and I think now that's going to pay off for the Kraken. I think a 1-2 down the middle of Matty Beniers, who took a step back last season on a kind of inferior team, but having Matty Beniers, having Chandler Stevenson, and then having Shane Wright, who can all play center. And if maybe it's Stevenson's role until Shane Wright kind of gets up to NHL speed. this team should be better. And I know there's still, the goaltending is going to be what it is with the goaltending, but I think the way they've kind of built this thing down the middle, and yes, I hate the Chandler Stevenson contract. I think it's way too much for way too long, but it's the price you have to pay sometimes with free agency. And I still think though, this team, maybe not the playoff team that we saw 2 years ago, but I think is a team that can be in the mix for a playoff spot, at least playing meaningful hockey past the trade deadline. I think that's kind of the goal for this team, is to at least be in the mix and see what happens with Shane Wright and Matty Beniers in our first full season together with. And if Shane Wright can continue the progress that he made last year, Matty Beniers can refine his rookie form, especially now with a legitimate, second line center behind him. I think this team should be a much more competitive team night in, night out, and should win a bunch more games. So we'll dig into which teams I think kind of stayed the same. And I think you can probably guess which teams those are going to be. Plus, we'll dig into the teams who I think got worse this offseason. So we'll get to that here in just 1 minute. If you want to go catch a baseball game, because it is still summertime, even though I know school's getting back and football's right around the corner, still go catch a baseball game. And Game Time makes it easy to go get tickets for Major League Baseball. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, on prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The thing I love is, especially if you're a bit of a procrastinator, the flash deals. They have last-minute tickets, zone deals, so you can still get a great seat without having to spend a ton of cash. And again, if you're a procrastinator, they got you covered with tickets up to an hour after the first pitch actually takes place. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Which teams do I think kind of stayed the same? And I think it's these are the teams that we know are going to be good teams. I think that's where we start with Edmonton Oilers. So, still very much in cap, very much cap squeezed right here. But when you're a team that made it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, you're definitely most likely going to be one of those teams that's going to have to kind of win in the margins, especially when have so much high-end money going to high-end talent. Draisaitl, this is Connor McDavid guy, right? So how did their offseason go? So key players, they added Victor Arvidsson, Josh Brown, and Jeff Skinner. They lost Sam Carrick, of course, bought out Jack Campbell, Vincent Descharnes, and Warren Fogle. But I think, though, this team, I really like the Jeff Skinner ad. I know there's news now about Evander Kane, who's probably going to, and this might actually kind of be a blessing in disguise for them, who Evander Kane was awful last season. I know he had surgery. Is probably going to start the season on LTIR, but will give them a little bit of flexibility, at least until he gets back. And then you can kind of see how things are going when he gets back. But, this team's still going to be really good, right? You still have Connor McDavid, who's in the peak of his powers, right? The best player in the world right now. And it's honestly not even really close. I like the Jeff Skinner, who you're getting him on a $3 million contract. Definitely not worth the $9 million that the Sabres were paying him, but coming in, I think more talent around Jeff Skinner, kind of a reduced role for Jeff Skinner. I really like that ad. I think it's got a really, really nice ad for them. And I just think as long as you have Draisaitl, who I know had a terrible playoffs, especially in the Stanley Cup, and McDavid, as long as you have those guys and you have Bouchard, who really came into his own last year, this team is going to be really good this year. And I think They were a really good team last year, especially after they made the coaching change and everything kind of fell apart for them with the Sharks loss beginning the season. But they're a really good team. They're going to continue to be a really good team. And they're a team, I think, last year that proved in the playoffs they can play multiple styles of hockey, where if you want to get in a track meet, cool. They're more than happy to get in a track meet with you. Or if you want to need them to play like a defensive, slog it down, they can play that style too. So I think they're going to be, I think they have to be the favorites to win the Pacific right now. And as long as there's going to be questions about Draisaitl and going into last year of his deal, all that fun stuff. But I think they try to run it back and see if they can win. So they stayed the same. Really good. Another team who I think stayed the same, if I'm trying to do this alphabetically, that would be, it's not Vancouver. I'm trying to do, no, LA Kings, L before V, my bad. So the LA Kings, spoiler, Vancouver's next. So they were much more active in free agency, but I think they're still kind of netted around the same. So players added, they got Kyle Burroughs, Joel Edmondson, Warren Foegele, Tanner Jeannot, Caleb Jones, and Darcy Kemper. They lost Victor Arvidsson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Carl Grundstrom, Blake Lizotte, and Matt Waugh. I think for them, of course, getting rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois might be one of those additions by subtraction things. Who knows with him? He just might be one of those guys who just kind of can't stay in a place for more than 2 seasons, or in this case, a season. There's plenty of questions about Darcy Kemper, but it feels like this team is probably in the exact same position where they're probably going to be a wild card team. They're either going to be the 3rd team in the Pacific or a wild card team, and they're probably going to have a tough matchup between either Vancouver or Edmonton, or if they're a wild card team, who knows, maybe most likely Pacific. Anyway, they're going to have a tough matchup, and they're probably going to lose in the first round in 6 or 7 games again. And it's just kind of the story of the Kings, and it's going to be this quickened rebuild. I don't even know, this reload or whatever they did is going to be something that's going to be studied for a long time, because of just how it didn't really go the way they wanted to. And they're just kind of that team, right? They're kind of the new Minnesota Wild, where they're going to win a bunch of games in the regular season. They're going to get into the playoffs, and then they're just not going to be able to do anything in the playoffs. And I think with some of the other teams in the Pacific, who I like a lot more, I still have questions about their goaltending, at least for the Kings. I think it's just I think they're kind of in the same spot, and I think they're kind of stuck in the same spot until they can figure out what to do next, or figure out, like, I don't know what makes the Kings special. Like, what do you point to with the King? Like, I know they were pretty good defensively last year, but like, it's a new head coach now, and I just don't know what makes them special. Like, what do you point to that makes them special? Maybe like Byfield has that huge monster season and kind of can elevate them, and that's a path forward. But I just think they're kind of the same team. So sorry, Kings fans. At least you'll get to go to the playoffs. So and probably lose in the first round again. So, and then Vancouver, of course, LKV. So Vancouver Canucks, who kind of one of those teams who, I mean, they were a very good team last year, and I think they're going to continue to be a very good team this year. And they were a little bit more, cap strapped, right? But they did make some big moves. They added Jake DeBrusk, Vincent Descharnes, Derek Forbort, and Danton Heinen. Of course, DeBrusk being kind of the big move that they did. Lost some guys with Ian Cole, Casey DeSmith, Elias Lindholm, and Nikita Zadorov. It felt like just the Canucks and Bruins just trading players this offseason. But I think, though, like, the moves are going to kind of work out, and they're going to be a good team, especially because I think DeBrusk is going to be a really nice fit for this team, where he's going to be kind of like the 3rd or 4th option, behind Pedersen and Besser and JT Miller. Like, he's going to be in those. You still have Quinn Hughes, who won the Norris last year, and Quinn Hughes is going to continue to be amazing. And if they get real goaltending, who like can stay healthy, and that's what killed them at the end of the season in the playoffs, right? Their goaltending, because they were on their like fifth goaltender. But they're really good that last season long, and I think they're going to continue to be really good. And if they can be healthy going into the playoffs, I think this is a team that can go deep into the Western playoff race. So I think they're going to be just as good as they were last year, and I think that the moves they make were some solid swap outs. So for Lindholm, who didn't really like, he had his ups and downs last year, and I think DeBrusk is going to be just kind of, I think he's going to do what Lindholm did on a more consistent basis. So we'll get to the two teams who I think are going to be worse next year, and you can do the math and figure out which two those are and why we need to be rooting for one of them to be bad this season. So we'll get to that here in just 1 minute. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharged roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, before we get, of course, into the two teams who I think are worse, spoiler, the Calgary Flames and the Vegas Golden Knights. Just want to, of course, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, go check out any of the great shows here on the Locked On Network. Of course, you have Locked On NHL, which is still putting out 5 episodes a week. Seth and I talked about regression candidates in the Western Conference, so you can go check that out for Tuesday's episode, or check out any of the great shows just here in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Niners with the Ayuk saga and training camp, get you guys ready for a new NFL season. You got Locked On A's, you got Locked On Giants, who are trying to, who knows what the Giants are doing, if they're making the playoffs or not. And you have Locked On Warriors, who are basking in Steph Curry's gold. So when you're done checking out Locked On Sharks, make sure you guys go check out one of those podcasts for your next episode, where we cover your team every day. All right. Which two teams got worse? We'll start, of course, Calgary. So the Flames this offseason, I think, got a lot worse, right? They did add Jake Bean, Devin Cooley, Ryan Lomberg, and Anthony Mantha. They lost AJ Greer, Oliver Shillington, and Jacob Markstrom to $20 million in cap space. But it feels like this team is, if they're trying to do the reload or start the rebuild or whatever it is, this team, I think, is going to be bad this season. And I love Dustin Wolf. I think Dustin Wolf's going to be a great goalie, but he's going to take the reins this year, and he's probably going to struggle at some point, because that's just kind of what happens, right? You kind of get the crap kicked out of you for a season, or for a little while, and especially with the team in front of him. I just don't think this team is going to be super competitive this year. And that's, they still have some nice pieces, right? You have Kadri, you have Huberdeau. I think like those guys are still good, but Huberdeau, I think there's a reason why Florida moved off from him to get Tkachuk, and that's worked out really well for the Panthers. But this team has kind of got a lot of older guys on long-term contracts. Stop me if this sounds familiar before, with some questions in goaltending. And you traded away your best goaltender this offseason, and you've been acquiring assets. Is there a world, especially when you looking at the Flames forward group, yes, they have more proven NHL players, but like I personally like the Sharks forward group. There's a world like the Flames have a better defense. I would say easily have a better defense core. But like there's a world where the Flames like totally flame out, no pun intended, and the Sharks, scrappy young guys, hit the ground running and good vibes Sharks. Like, there's a world where the Flames are the worst team in the Pacific. Maybe it's teal color glasses, but that's kind of my hot take going into this season is I think the Sharks might finish higher than the Flames in the Pacific. So anyway, yes, I think this team is. I think they're prepping themselves for a much needed rebuild because whatever they had before, right, just couldn't kind of get over the hump, and they've been kind of adrift the past couple seasons, and feels like they need a direction, and maybe a terrible season kind of pushes them in the direction that I think they need to go. So, and that leaves everyone's favorite team to hate, the Vegas Golden Knights, who this season, off season, they added Alexander Holtz, Victor Olofsson, Elos Samsonov. They lost Michael Amato, William Carrier, Anthony Mantha, Jonathan Marchessault, Alec Martinez, and goalie Logan Thompson. They're still negative cap space, I think, with Rob Laner's LTIR. They'll be fine with that. But this team has lost a lot of talent. And we've seen this picture before, right? Think of Sharks 2019, 2020, when they lost Pavelski and they lost Gus Nyquist and, just all these guys. You can't keep everyone forever. You can't be aggressive forever. You have to pay the credit card bill. And yes, they still have Jack Eichel, who's very good and in the prime of his career. You have Mark Stone, who's been hurt a lot, but still, when he's out there, he's productive. You have Hurdle, who, is coming off an injury at the end of the season. You have, William Karlsson, who I think is a solid, middle six type of guy. But like after that, it's a lot of question marks, can Brandon Busan finally break out? Is Alexander Holtz, can he finally break out? The defense is getting older and they just paid Noah Hannafin a ton of money for a long time. And yes, this is the most aggressive team, and they will swap guys out, and they don't care. They will trade anyone. They'll trade their mother as well if it makes them a better team today. And who knows what they have up their sleeve. But they don't have their first round pick this year, right? They don't have their first round pick next year, and they have one of the worst prospect pools in the entire system, in the entire NHL. And the one guy you trade in the first round this year, like he has zero trade asset because of the red flags in Trevor Conley. I don't know, man. I think this team, the credit card bill always comes due, right? Sharks fans know this better than anybody. The credit card bill always comes due. And you wonder if this is the year where the credit card bill always comes due, which would be a great timing for us Sharks fans because, as a reminder, the Sharks have the Vegas Golden Knights 2025 unprotected first round pick. So they're getting that first round pick no matter if it's a first pick in the draft, if it's whatever it is, they're getting that pick. And I think the lack of depth up front, the old aging core, and even I know the goalies, like you still have Aiden Hill, who has trouble staying healthy. You have Samsonov, like, again, who's played well in spurts, and I know he's had his ups and downs as well. But this team it always feels like somebody's hurt. And this if you just wonder if this is the year where the Sharks, maybe their luck continues the way we saw last year, where yes, it was a bad season, but they got lucky with getting the first overall pick and then getting the 14th pick from the Penguins. What if it just continues and you get another top 15 pick from Vegas, plus probably a top 3 to 5 pick at worst case scenario from your own pick, and then you're flying there, buddy. So I think Vegas, I just And who knows, maybe they're right. Everyone comes out and they just continue to dominate because they just do have high end talent, right? I don't see it on the bottom six, and I worry with their injury history with a lot of guys that they're counting on in Mark Stone and Tomas Hertl, and Jack Eichel. Like, do those guys stay healthy all season? So we'll see. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back Thursday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. We'll be back soon. We have a good friend expected to join the show to talk about some World Juniors Summer Showcase and the Hlinka Gretzky Tournament. So we'll start to we'll look at some Sharks prospects and look at some guys who kind of names to know. We'll just say so as we start to gear up towards another season. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Until tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, sometime later this week. Bye, friends.